Welcome back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. On episode 107, I am delighted to be joined by Donegal ladies football captain and the 2022 Players Player of the Year, Niamh McLaughlin. This episode was recorded back in September and we discuss her career, tearing her ACL 3 times, the soccer setup in the UK, Donegal and so much more. Hi Niamh, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
Hey Orla, thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Before we get into everything, I suppose a lot of my listeners might not know or watch ladies football, so would you mind giving a quick elevator pitch to the listeners who might not know who you are?
Yeah, no bother. So Niamh McLaughlin, play football currently with Donegal and have done for a good while. Currently working as a physiotherapist in HSC, but also have a kind of specialised interest in sort of sports rehab, ACL, knee injuries in particular. Probably stems from my own sort of experience of injury. Studied in Newcastle in England, so would have played a bit of soccer over there in my time and played a wee bit of soccer underage, but sticking at the football for now anyway for a good while, I'd say.
Very good. Who was your sporting influence growing up? Was there anyone in particular that put the ball in your hand?
We wouldn't have been a particularly, not that we wouldn't have been a non-sporty family, but I just always, just from as long as I can remember, that's all I would have done was play football, and always had an interest. Probably soccer first was my first kind of love, just in terms of growing up when I was younger, playing out in the street with most of the boys and that sort of stuff. Then I joined the local soccer team, and then probably started playing football then about maybe when I was 10 or 11 maybe, and again that was all with the boys teams, kind of underage, until we got into the girls then at maybe under 12, under 14. So I'd say probably one of the biggest influences is probably in terms of soccer anyway, was probably a lady called Margaret Mahal, who's down at a local club with me. I actually went to school in Derry, but she was in charge of sort of running the school's FAI team. So I couldn't actually play on the team, but she invited me down to the trials. So I got the opportunity to play there, and I knew she sort of explained that I could never play. I couldn't get picked for the team, but I actually ended up getting picked to go for actual trials then at the time. So I think she knew what she was doing. So I'm very grateful for that. And it's probably not until when I grew up that I sort of realised sort of the impact that she had. So no, I'm very grateful for her. And then in terms of football, I suppose my mum and dad just would have always, like every mum and dad, carted you around the country or the county and take you here and there, wherever you wanted to go, they were there to take me. So my family's probably a big one too.
When you mentioned playing for the boys, that's something we see with a lot of top players, and sometimes it was down to maybe when they were younger, just the participation level wasn't there for girls, so they had to join the boys team, and then later on a girls team formed. Is that something, playing with the boys, is that something that you'd advocate for girls to do, even though now we are seeing the participation levels? Or what do you think about staying kind of, some clubs like to keep it separate the whole time, but what do you think about the crossover of girls playing with boys?
No, I definitely think it had a massive impact on me. I think it's definitely, like you said, it's sort of different now where, obviously when you get to competitive level or a wee bit older, it's not mixed. But I think definitely for younger age groups, there's definitely there's a time and a place for it. I know not all the girls would have played in the boys team. It might have been the girls that were, maybe had a bit more skill, or, were maybe at that time a bit better developed in terms of football and ability. But it definitely made me a better player. So I think it is something in the younger age groups for sure. And obviously then when boys and girls start to get older, just obviously boys have a lot more advantage in terms of strength and power and things. So it probably becomes a bit, it's not as practical then. But I think definitely for sure, and it's good for boys and good for girls, because I think it makes both sides appreciate the other as well. And then obviously that for growing up, just the respect then that girls can have for boys and boys can have for girls, especially when playing sport too. So it's very good.
When you look back now as a senior intercounty footballer to, let's say, development age groups or 14, 16 minor at the county level, what are the most important areas for development that you see now that you might have gone through, or maybe sometimes you might not have gone through and you realise now, God, maybe it's very important to work on X or Y?
Yeah, I think looking back to my to my underage kind of experience at county level. Do you know that the biggest thing that stands out to me was most of the stuff that we did at training was high catch, kicking, left foot, right foot, soloing, left foot, right foot. You know, all your basic skills, but trying to get the basic skills nailed on. And I think now as well as things have developed, and obviously the games develop tactically, and you know, I think sometimes those things can get lost. And sometimes you still get players and girls and boys who maybe the basic skills aren't as nailed on. And maybe that's just lack of practice at training. Maybe it's taking those things for granted. But I don't think for those basic skills you can never practice enough. And they're the ones that end up getting you over the line. And they're the ones that, you know, when it comes down to a game and you're under pressure, it's a catch that maybe you could have made, or you know, you obviously everyone makes mistakes, but I think at the end of the day, when you watch matches, even at the highest level, it's the basic skills and the ball handling and the ability to do that under pressure is what makes the biggest difference. And I think for that, largely in underage, I don't think that needs to change at all. And it still should be like a core element of all training foundations from the whole age right up into senior as well.
Do you see underage teams at any level kind of making mistakes then, where, you know, you mentioned kind of moving too quickly toward tactics, or even from the physio side of things, athletic development? Is there anything that you're currently hearing of or seeing teams not doing?
I think for me, the thing that I have sort of probably noticed, and whether I'm right or wrong, but I think definitely in maybe, you know, at club level or even at county level, you know, participation is obviously massive, and it's really important, especially for girls, to keep girls involved in sport. And I think sometimes that can kind of, you know, disappointment and failure can be seen as like a bad thing, and people are almost afraid to fail or be disappointed. You know, but that is part of sport. That's part of life, you know. And I suppose disappointment is obviously, it's not a nice feeling to have, but it's also how you learn as well. And I think the encouragement to know that failing, or you know, being disappointed or not winning the match, you know, that's not the end of the world. You know, I think sometimes there's, which is great for participation, but you know, everyone's a winner all the time now. And you see, even at county level, there's a lot of different grades, and there's different finals and different names for the different finals, and everyone ends up playing in a final. And then when you get to the older age groups where it's not good or whatever, you know, people probably become quite discouraged from that then. And maybe that's where the dropout rate comes, because you've never failed before, you've never been disappointed. So all of a sudden when that happens, it's like it's a shock to the system, and people can't deal with it. So I think, like, you know, making sure that understanding that not winning, that being disappointed and not winning all the time isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's a point then where you can say, right, okay, how can I get better and how can I improve on this, you know?
That's a really good point. And I love the way you spoke about maybe they get to like a later stage in their career, because they've never, in air quotes, kind of failed and not being picked. When it doesn't happen then at a later age, they get discouraged and drop away, because you always make the argument of, sometimes when you look at the top players, they, like, say Brian Fenton, for example, never played underage, played a bit at under 21 for Dublin, and is now won 2 Player of the Year. So it's like you can see the kind of the different rates that drop out at different age groups, but the argument is there of maybe failing early, with the failing with air quotes, is nearly a good thing for players. Because if I was a manager and I picked you, I think you're great, but the next manager might not want to pick you, Niamh. And it's kind of that different argument with players. It's like, how do you keep them participating, but how do you balance the failure part, and failure in air quotes?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's a really important, it's a really important thing to have, because, you know, especially if you think of girls in and around that age group, minor, and then it's kind of minor to senior, there's obviously, you know, maybe within counties there's 20 and 21 competitions, and you know, there used to be an under 21 sort of all Ireland sort of series for those girls. But you know, there's it's very, very unlikely that, you know, girls the woodwork at 22, 23 or 2, maybe once a year if you're lucky. But largely the girls come through, the girls that you know and you've heard of. But you know, when girls sort of don't reach that potential, or don't maybe get picked for a team or a squad that maybe they think or they have been told that they should be picked for, they can just sometimes, just say, oh, that's me. And that's where you lose girls. And I actually spoke to someone there from a different county. It was like County Limerick the girl was from. And she was of the same thing. We were sort of chatting about our club and our counties and, just the general state of it in Ireland and women's football. And she was sort of saying, yeah, it's the same thing. Girls can't cope when some girls can't whenever they fail or they're disappointed. And it's really difficult to keep those girls on board. But I suppose that's where you have to try and create that environment from the start that this is what we're about and this is our values. And, you just have to keep going with it because, as I said, things like your basic skills and like you said, Brian Fenton, it comes back around, and if you want it enough, like you'll get there eventually, hopefully.
Yeah, good point. Why didn't you quit then growing up? What kept you involved in sport?
Like pure enjoyment, I think, as well. I was probably always very fortunate that I was able to play sport at two different sports at a high level. And it probably just so happened that the teams in the age group that I was surrounded by, very good players as well. So we were always quite successful. And of course, it's easy to keep coming back when you're winning and you're enjoying yourself. But I think as well, like, the friendships you make as well and the crack that you have, before training and after training and even during training, that's important too. As long as you keep the head down and get the work done, then, that there's room for that for sure. And I think that's a big thing. And I suppose having good coaches and good people around me to be able to support me and, making sure that whatever I wanted to do as a child growing up or as a teenager was made as easy as possible for me. So, again, family and friends and like I said, being successful is also quite a nice thing. And I probably contradict myself now when you talk about failure. Like I've had plenty of those too and plenty of setbacks, but I think just that willingness to kind of keep coming back and you're in a safe place and you're going to enjoy yourself when you are there, whether you win or lose. That team bond and the friendships that you have.
Mm-hmm. Was there any point in your career? I know you moved to the UK for college, but kind of underage growing up, that pressure was put on you to pick. And I'm conscious that there's a lot of younger listeners that might be in that position where they've been put under pressure by X or Y to choose at a certain age. And kind of,
Yeah.
do you have any advice if you ever went through it or kind of how to manage that?
Yeah, I think like when I was younger, especially probably when I look back to my busiest time, was probably when I was maybe 15, 16. Um, and I was playing with the Irish under-17 soccer, but I was also playing with Donegal at under-16 and minor level. And again, the Donegal teams, we were very successful in those years, and we got to Ulster finals and all, excuse me, All Ireland finals. And I would have one of my vivid memories of that age group is myself and two other girls, Ciara Grant and Tiny Kennedy. We'd have played an Ulster final in Monaghan and hopped on a bus straight to Dublin to go to a training camp or whatever it might be. But at that time, there wasn't as much soccer in Donegal. So our first sport was football. And, that didn't hold us back. We went down to Dublin and, we were probably three of the fittest and could run for the longest and do all those things. I think as I got older then, when you're trying to be the best at your sport, it's really difficult to give yourself to both of those. Now I know there's people out there that do it. I suppose with me wanting to be a physio and getting my degree and stuff, that maybe added extra pressure. It just so happened that when I went to England, there wasn't football there, so soccer was the go-to. And again, it fell quite nicely for me that I was able to play at a very high standard there, and again had good coaches, and again, fortunately, was part of a good team. So it's definitely a difficult one. I think it's a wee bit less common now. There's always the kind of anomaly there where there's one person who can do the both, or they can kind of split themselves between the two. But I think largely as you get a wee bit older, it's probably more likely that you have to kind of pick one or two, depending on what level you want to get to.
When you've got that age group, that I think it's more the 15, 16, maybe 17 age group where girls or boys are just playing on multiple teams and end up having 2 sessions, maybe 3 a day, and you're like, when you look at their kind of like training plan, and you're just like, how do you try balance all of that? And I know communication is obviously the one that sometimes breaks down because coaches don't want to listen to Niamh playing soccer or Niamh playing basketball or Niamh playing hockey.
Yeah.
How do you manage that as a player? And because 3 sessions or 2 sessions a day, multiple times a week, might work when you're 16, 17, but you might not be playing sport when you're 24, which is what I
Yeah.
learned from speaking to Luke Keeney a while ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for sure, look, when you're younger and you're probably below that sort of 15, 16 age group before you start, you go through your changes and all those sorts of things. But, you know, playing as many sports as possible, obviously, when you're younger is brilliant, and it just completely diversifies your skills and your communication and, you know, all those sort of skill sets that you have. But as you get that wee bit older, when training becomes more intense, when coaches and the team that you're involved in are demanding higher levels off you, and rightly so, um, you know, you have university level, you have all these different things coming on. I think probably there was a period, especially when Luke was kind of going through that time, there probably wasn't enough research and information about it. But there probably is a wee bit of common sense between all those teams that was missing as well. I think now it's definitely much more talked about topic, and people are definitely much more aware of it. I think, to be fair, coaches, even if they don't come from a scientific background, coaches now these days are willing to listen to the medical staff. There's a lot more of a holistic approach between players and that communication between all the stakeholders that are there, but again, the players at the center of it, so their voice and their opinion has to come first. And again, look, you're always going to get the one or two where it's really difficult, or a coach or someone who's a bit more difficult to talk to that way. I suppose you just have to listen to your body at that stage and go with that, and try and get advice from the right people, and not having too many people sort of talking in your ear as well. I suppose, which people do you respect most, which sport or which teams are you kind of most focus on, and how do you feel? Because at the end of the day, it's up to the player in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Talk us through moving to the UK for college. You mentioned playing soccer at a high level. How did that opportunity come up, and kind of what was the decision to go to the UK? Was it more the course and college wise, or was it a bit of football involved there as well?
Yeah, so basically I just didn't get enough points to stay here at home. I wanted to stay at home. I wanted to play football. I tried to get into Jordanstown for Ulster Uni, but I didn't get the HPAT. I didn't get high enough score in the HPAT. So I actually just kind of, physio I knew is what I wanted to do. So I ended up getting into Northumbria and Newcastle. And again, I thought, okay, I'll play a bit of soccer there, because the standard of soccer would be higher than football, and I wouldn't be one to kind of just go for a bit of I want to be playing at a competitive level and just trying to get the best out of myself. So I thought, oh, that was a good opportunity for me. Maybe it was nice just to have a bit of a break from the football as well at that time. Because I enjoyed both sports. And it just so happened that the coach at the university team was also the coach at Sunderland. So went and played. I played with Newcastle first, and then I went and played with Sunderland, and that was good. We were playing in, it was the development team at the time when I first went, and then there was the Super League team, who were obviously the team above the first team. And then as the year went on, as my time in college went on, I did the pre-season with the first team, and then was going to get a contract to play, and then I ended up actually hurting my knee. Played half the season before, kind of I was still part of the development team, but played and was on the squad for the first team. So we would have been playing like Chelsea, Man City. I got a few minutes now, not too many, but
Wow.
And then that summer, then I ended up going away to the university games in Taipei with the Irish soccer team, and tore my cruciate there, so that kind of put a cut to that. So rehabbed with the team, etc. And then by that stage, came back. So I had 5 or 6 years there in Newcastle, playing with both Newcastle and Sunderland. So it was a very, very good experience, and good experience at that high level as well, especially from going from intercounty over to that different, because soccer's a bit more technical as well. So I really enjoyed my time there.
I was going to ask you about that actually, and that going into like a professional, probably, I don't know how professional it was maybe then. You can probably give us a bit of an insight into maybe comparing intercounty into what you saw during your time in the UK at that pro level, basically.
Yeah. So we would have trained out of the Academy of Light, which is the Sunderland men's obviously set up, and obviously the facilities there were brilliant. At the time when I first joined, it wasn't as sort of probably similar enough to here. The girls were getting what the boys didn't need, in terms of time slots, etc. Um, we had access to the gym, but again, before training, it wasn't like a full time thing, and none of the girls were full time at that stage. But the coach, Mel Ray, again, probably one of the best soccer coaches that I've had, in terms of technical wise, and just her ability to coach and take you through things, and made things the simplest of the simplest level. And I even still remember things now, but she would have coached the girls, the 21s and the under 23s, I think, as well. So she was very, very high standard. So from a coaching point of view, it was definitely up there. And again, the girls were doing the best they could to make it as professional as possible, and demanding those high standards of people. And I'll always remember the first time I went from development into the first team, and Beth Mead, who plays for England now, was playing, and there's a few other girls who are still in the Super League, like Lucy Staniforth and those girls. But I remember going to the training, and we were doing a passing drill, and they just absolutely rifled the ball in at your feet. And if you couldn't control it, that was your problem. So just even your first touch, just the difference coming from Ireland, from home playing soccer, just that was one of the biggest things, was like how hard that they actually pass the ball. And it makes sense, because the faster the ball can get there, the better. But I always remember that. I remember thinking, oh my God, leaving my first touch, I nearly had bruises on my feet, because they used to just rifle the ball. But it made me a better player then, because you get used to it eventually, and just the speed of it, and even playing in, like, the small squares and the small sided games, like the 4v4, like you'd feel like you were running in circles. I probably was running in circles after them, and it just felt like they had so much time in the ball. And when I got it, I was just fouled up. But and that was definitely a very good experience. And again, it was challenging, but again, something that I really, really enjoyed.
That's interesting to hear. Is when you mentioned they're demanding professional standards, when at the time maybe as you said, it was kind of what the boys needed, and then the girls were kind of given what they didn't want or need. What is that for those that, like for myself, I've never been in a pro setup. What does it mean when players are demanding professional standards? Can you give us a bit of an insight into that?
Just those sort of things in training. Like I talked about the basic skills before, and if your basic skills weren't at a standard, then you weren't around the place. um you know there'd be a lot of sort of encouragement, maybe even constructive criticisms, maybe even not so much constructive but criticism. But it's something that you kind of have to have a bit of a thick skin for. And it was nothing that was ever personal, nothing that I would ever have went away feeling crap about myself or anything. But you're just thinking, God, like, these are the standard bearers, these are what I need to get to. Just the really simple things that they would have got done. Like every drill was done, as I was talking about, we have a bit of crack in the training and starting the changing room before you go out. But when you get out there, like, that's you switched on, and every drill was done to the best of your ability. You're doing runs or you're doing fitness, it's done. There's nothing left in the tank. And look, it's the same at intercounty level now. It's all those same standards that I'm sure all the county teams demand of each other. That when you're there and you're present, and you're giving it everything you have. And if you can give everything, and you can give as much hard work as you can, then everything else kind of falls into place. But especially with the soccer, which football skills and that would have come more naturally to me. I found it easier to fall back into football than, as I said, get your touch right in the soccer pitch. And it's a bit more technical as well, so there's a bit more to sort of think about at times. So again, it's just all the simple things done really, really consistently well, and then trying to get everything else up as best you can, whether that's time spent practicing yourself, whether it was your passing, your range of passion, your shooting, your finishing. Sort of similar enough to the forwards, playing football, or the shooters, the free takers, basketball players, whoever it might be. Putting the work in outside of the training ground as well.
You're a pro, Niamh. I was going to ask you how close is intercounty now to the professional setup, but it sounds like there isn't a huge amount of difference apart from maybe the paycheck, really.
No, definitely not. And look, it's the same all over. It's really it's gone on an upward trajectory there in this last 3 or 4 years, especially with the men obviously have had strength and conditioning for a while. It's obviously filtered in now to the girls. And if girls teams don't have of S&C, it's probably like, what? It's not like, probably previously it was maybe thought like, oh, they're doing weights. Like, where now it's thinking, oh, they're not doing them, or not necessarily even weights, that's, I'm not even talking about like deadlifting 100 kg or anything like that. But, the things are kept as basic as possible, but for the right reasons. And, it's all to kind of complement your sport. And the gym will only go so far, and the gym is there, and the S&C is there to complement your on pitch performance. But definitely, like, even the buy-in from the girls, and I would even say at intercounty level, it's at a much higher professional standard, because, the likes of girls traveling as far as they do, like that. In England, if I would talk to my friends now, they'd be thinking, what, you're mental traveling that far for training and doing this and doing that, and maybe not getting all your money back from expenses, etc. But look, it's just something girls do, because it's girls want to do it, and it's, like you said, you're just trying to be as best you can. So it's definitely up there.
Like you said there, it's kind of instead of saying, oh, they're doing weights, it's like they're not doing weights. It's like that. It's now kind of I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but non-negotiable is too strong. But it's like you're expected, like when you're going into an intercounty setup, I expect, coach, the manager, obviously, coach, selectors, then it's S&C, nutrition, maybe a sports psychologist. I think that's now coming into it more. It's like those professional demands are now coming in. When you mention expenses, that's something that could be a podcast in itself. But why do you, and you mentioned to your friends when they're like, God, you're mad to be doing this when you're not getting paid. Why do you play intercounty football, Niamh? Why do you do it and kind of put yourself under, maybe even Anna Galvin spoke about the financial pressure she puts herself under, but why do you play intercounty football, and why do you love it so much?
I think, again, it's just going back to, it's something that, it's part of us, it's part of the Irish culture, it's part of, it's your community, it's who you play for, it's your county, it's where you're from. And that's the thing I found different between soccer and football is, soccer teams, you can kind of come and go. Yeah, obviously, you can change club if you want, but it's unlikely that happens. And usually it's for a good reason. But I think that sense of belonging, and knowing that you're coming with people from your own area, you're wanting to do well for where you're from, your community, your county, and you're trying to challenge yourself and be as best you can, because for a long time there wasn't any sort of professional setup in Ireland, especially for females, and it's something that girls are still sort of fighting towards, and it's definitely getting better. But I think the time and effort and commitment that goes now into an intercounty team, and the time and effort and commitment that we can see that management, and maybe even there's guys in now who are ex intercounty male and ex clubs and whatever, but they're wanting to come because there's a draw to that ladies side of things now. And as I said, that the standard is pretty good, and there's a lot of brilliant, skillful players. So they're the players that you want to look to, and they're the players that you want to be playing against, in and out each week, even if they are a better team. But that's what you want to do. You want to be pinning yourself against those people. And I think it's a draw, and I think it's a compliment to us that there is people wanting to get involved and sponsor and manage and coach, and there's people offering their services. And whereas a few years ago it might have been very difficult to get a physio or performance analysis to commit to a year long in a women's team. Like, it's definitely not as easy probably as it is for men, as an attractive, because maybe the money side of things, but it's definitely not as hard as it used to be. And I think that's a kind of testament to the players and kind of the development of things over the last wee while.
When you look to across all the players you're playing with or have played with in the past, or kind of the UK, when you think about the great players that you've played against, is there any particular pattern you see amongst that just elite group, those 1% that you see about players? I'm always trying to discover kind of what's that sort of X factor that separates the great players from the rest. Is there anything you can kind of put your finger on?
Yeah, I think it's those players that no matter how the game or how training is going, they just keep going. They just keep running. They just keep going for the next ball. They just keep taking a shot in the right positions. They work well for their team, and they just empty it on the tank. Our current coach at the minute, Maxie, would always talk about Carl Lacey coming off the pitch against Kildare, and I think it was 2011, and he couldn't even speak. He said like he had just given everything and he got player of the match and he couldn't even do the interview. He had to go straight to the change room because he was just on his knees and couldn't even speak because he had just ran himself into the ground. And I think, you know, I think those great players, even if things aren't going their way, they find a way to win. They find a way to get on the ball. And like when I say win, I don't even mean like win the match because sometimes that's not possible. But you know, they win their battles, they win the ball, they get the next one. So I think those players are the players that bring everyone else, you know, along with them. When you see someone doing that on the pitch for your team, or even if you see someone in the opposition team, they just keep going and going. Like if you're on the opposition, it's like, oh God, there she goes again. But if they're on your team, you're thinking, oh, there she goes again, you know. So it's just those players that they just find a way to keep going as long as they can, and they bring everyone else along with them.
Okay, great answer. You mentioned bringing men's players in. Mark McHugh was involved with you at this. Was it this year or last year?
Yeah, just gone there this year.
What sort of impact and knowledge did he bring to the team without giving away all of his secrets?
Yeah, look, Mark's obviously Mark was one of the best players in Donegal and probably still is at club level. You know, he's even just having someone like that who's achieved what he has. You know those guys who won that All Ireland in 2012 are up on a pedestal, you know, and because you could see them. And I talk about Carl Lacey, but every single one of those players were on their knees at the end of every match because that's the way that they played. And look, Mark is obviously a really intelligent player, and I would have got great benefit from speaking to him and just getting wee insights and, you know, asking questions of him and what did he think about this and what did he think about that. And you know, he had a wee bit of a sweeper role, so he would have kind of gone from that transitional play. And I suppose myself, that's what maybe the position that I kind of am in, kind of that link between defence and attack or whatever. But so I definitely would have got a lot of good insights from him. And again, very open to helping and wanting to help. And sometimes when you've never met these people before, you're not really sure what they're going to be like, you know, especially because they are who they are. But you know, just very much down to earth and a very good guy to have around the place as well.
I was reading online before we hit record. Did you do your cruciate 3 times?
Yeah, I did. I did my.
Was it the same one or was it different ones?
I did my right one probably around that time I was chatting there, but it was that very busy time, 15, 16. I did my right one around then. We had played a minor All Ireland final. We were beat by Galway on the Sunday. Then I had a soccer match for my local team on the Thursday. And then in that weekend, I was supposed to go, we were actually going over to London to Arsenal to play with the Irish under-17s because we were going to the European finals that summer. So this was like a pre-trip. And I did it on the Thursday. So I was 16 at the time. And I remember ringing the physio being like, oh, this has happened. Like hadn't a clue what a cruciate was or anything. I was explaining to her, she was like, did you hear pop? I was like, yeah, I heard pop, it's a bit swollen. She was like, okay, yeah. She was like, right, we're going to need to get a scan. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? How long am I out for? Obviously the first question that anyone asks when they're injured, how long am I out for? And I just remember her saying to me on the phone, yeah, we'll not talk about that right now. And I was just like, oh my God. So that obviously, look, I was very lucky at the time. Our doctor with the Irish team got me in at Santry with Ray Moran. So I got the surgery in October that year. Got back playing, did my rehab, did everything I was told to do. And then the following year, maybe in November, I was playing soccer again and I got a bad tackle from behind and sort of the same thing. It didn't feel the same as the first time, but I ended up having to get surgery on that again. So got back from that, did my rehab. Didn't actually start playing until I went back until I started university. So it was just before I was going to university. So I started playing soccer again, had no bother at all. And then it was actually then at the university games in 2017 that I did my left one again, a bit of a tackle. So all playing soccer. So I'm retired now.
That's why you're playing GAA.
Yeah. No, but look, I was very lucky that I the first 2 times, knowing what I know now looking back, I'm probably not overly surprised that maybe it had happened again. Look, it was definitely a bit of bad luck, I feel, as well on my part. But just in terms of the rehab development from now and then. Like I did everything I was told, I was diligent that way. It just probably, just the research wasn't there to get everything. And then when I did my left one then in 2017, I had a really good S&C coach in the UK, Paul Parker, who worked with West Ham ladies, and he's actually with Charlton now. So I owe a lot to him, and he probably again really sort of enabled my ambition to kind of go into that kind of rehab and specialise in that area. I learned so much off him, and look, I've had very good rehabs, and I don't really feel the ill effects of it at all. So touch wood, it stays that way.
Yeah. So you were 16, 18 and about 21, 22.
Yeah. So I was 16 and 17, and then I think it was actually my birthday. So it was my 23rd birthday. I think it happened then. I was in with Mr. Moore, and he was just like, "Oh, you'll not forget this birthday," I was like, "No, I won't forget this one." Thanks, Ray.
Oh God. And when you mentioned looking back to kind of that 16 age group, I think the 17 one is probably a bit of hard luck as well. Like a bad tackle that's an awful way to go out with an injury. But when you look to that 16 age, was that down to your body kind of not being able to handle the load it was going through, or was it just again a bit of bad luck?
Yeah, like at the time, I don't remember feeling, tired or fatigued, and like I had my exams around the same time as well. So like it probably was a build up. Like we had a really good run at the soccer, the under 17s, and we'd been away and we'd qualified for the first time for the Euro. So that was like such a buzz. And then we were coming back in and playing minor, and we won Ulster, and we went the whole way to the All Ireland final. So that is such a buzz as well. And you probably with not even realizing it, just trying to go as hard as you can every time, and that's going to take it out of your body for sure. And then the soccer match that I went and played was a nothing game as well. It wasn't like, it was just another thing that I had at the time, and I had exams and stuff. So there probably was a bit of a build up, and maybe unbeknown to me, a wee bit of stress and stuff. But um, it definitely, looking at it now, I don't think that kind of position that I was in would happen as much, because I think girls who are playing definitely the soccer and an Irish level now probably wouldn't be playing a lot of intercounty football. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't envisage that would be, especially because soccer's gone massively popular as well, and there's an opportunity for girls to get really good at that and go and be professional. So I don't see maybe the crossover as much.
Okay, that's fair. And when you're going through those injuries, when you do it the second and third time, what goes through your head when you've already done it? Is it, oh my God, I have to do this again? Or is it, okay, I've got through this before, I just have to get through it again?
Yeah, I think the first time was obviously like, I remember just crying all the time. And that was more through disappointment of not being able to go away with the team. And the team were doing really well. They ended up taking me on the trip, which was just amazing at the time. And then when I done it the second time, again, you're just thinking, oh my God, I can't believe it. But like it was never a thought for me that I would never get back playing, or that I wasn't going to do it. Obviously you go through times and you're thinking, oh God, back to the gym again or whatever. But I just remember I had a wee bit of routine. I would have come home, done my homework, went to the gym for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it was every day. When it happened the third time, then that was probably the hardest one, because I was a wee bit older. And I remember at the time, I'd been playing the soccer and I'd been really fit at the time and had a really good preseason. So that was probably the most frustrating one for me, because I had been really fit and I just didn't really have any answers for it. I remember going to a match, and I remember it just vividly in my head. There was a man there, and I was on the crutches, and he was like, "Oh, is that the third time now?" And I was like, "Yeah." It was like, "Oh, you may give up." And it was never something that really, it stuck with me, but not for a bad reason. I just thought, I didn't. I remember it happening, but I don't remember thinking, "Yeah, he's right," or it wasn't even the fact that, oh yeah, I'm going to show you. It was just, no, I'm doing this for myself, and I want to get back playing. And look, there's definitely times where you don't feel great, or I didn't feel great at the time. And there's days where the rehab doesn't feel great, but I suppose again, I wouldn't be the one to outwardly say too much, but I suppose I was really lucky that I had people around me that they knew that maybe I wasn't having a good day, and I didn't have to say that I was, and I knew that they knew, and that was enough for me, you know. So I think it's just important to have those people around you again. And look, at it definitely is tough. And I think there's a lot of support out there now for girls. And as I said, research is, you know, boys as well, and anyone who's going through an injury like this. But I think just the important thing is get in with a good physio, get in with someone with experience with it, because like an ACL injury is definitely an injury that you need really good, high quality care and rehab. And I think that's something that was maybe missing. It's come on so much, and there's a lot of great physios out there doing great things. So I think that's definitely, you know, it's not an injury where you'll be gone forever or you'll never get back. It's not thought of that way. Obviously, at the time, you can have your time to be disappointed about it, but look, you'll get back there. And I think that's the kind of comfort I had, was like, oh no, I've done it before. I can do it again. You know, no, I wouldn't ever think of doing it again or anything like. But I just suppose, look, it's just one of those things. You know, you'll get back. You know, so.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when you look now from a professional standpoint, like I love looking at the videos now with, I don't know the player that's going to the ACL injury, but I just find it so interesting that you give the insight. It's cool. But when you look at from a professional standpoint, or even just when you hear of other athletes coming back from a big injury, whether it's an ACL or maybe something big like an Achilles or something kind of major like that, what's the biggest mistake you see people make in terms of that recovery?
I think probably maybe at the start of the injury is just maybe going too fast, not getting your basics settled. So get the knee as happy as you can. You know, what I mean by that is get the pain and swelling all under control. You know, get a bit of muscle activation going in the quads, hamstrings, whatever it is, get your walking properly, get all the basics nailed on. And if you can get whatever injury it is, whether it is Achilles or knee or hip, whatever it is, if you can get it to a level where you're fairly comfortable over the, you know, as quick as you can from the time of injury, whether that's 3 or 4 weeks, whatever it is, the sooner you can get that to a certain level, the easier everything else follows. You know, sometimes maybe people jump the gun a bit and think, oh, I'm doing really well, and they maybe overdo it, whereas you don't want to have a lingering pain or ache. Look, pain is part of rehab, of course, but you know, you don't want to be irritating anything early days. And if you can get all that stuff settled quickly, everything else I've always found follows along a lot easier, and it's much easier to progress rather than, okay, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think just having a logical, structured stages, and okay, this is what we're working at now to get on to the next stage. Okay, you need to tick these boxes, and you don't go from stage to stage until you have those ticked. Sometimes there might be a wee bit of crossover, but I think just being really diligent and listening to your physio or your rehab specialist, whoever it might be, and giving yourself a break as well is also good. Just having a wee bit of a mental break, and knowing that it's okay to be a bit frustrated when something doesn't go wrong. Like the person on my video is actually my sister, so she hurt hers during the year. So you know, we had a session there last weekend, and she was getting a bit annoyed, and I was like, it's fine, it's not going to be perfect. And I was like, go outside and get a bit of fresh air and come back in. So she's like, right, okay. You know, we had a bit of a laugh about it. So I think those things are important too.
That's gas. I wouldn't be able to do rehab with my sister if she was my physio. We wouldn't last in the gym together. How do you find that part?
No, look, Don, it's great. Someone was like, oh yeah, does she do her exercises because she's afraid of being? I was like, no, she does her exercises because she wants to. And she's like, yeah, I do them because I want to do them. You know, so no, she's great. And look, she's in the county setup too. So we had a really great S&C. You know, we've had Paul Fisher's been great with us this year, and so she's quite familiar with a lot of the things that we're doing, and I think that always helps as well. You know, the importance of kind of having a bit of strength and conditioning or gym, just God forbid anything like that would ever happen. So, you know, it's not that we're starting from scratch, it's just sort of relearning again, you know, so those things all help. But no, she's good, she's motivated, and she wants to get back. And like she says, so she's seen me before as well, but so it's definitely doable.
That's good. How do you find then with the 3 ACLs that you've gone through? How's that shaped you into the player and the physio you are today?
Yeah, it's I would like to think that, you know, when people see me play, that it's not it's not known, and it wouldn't affect me. There used to be a time when people asked me about my ACLs, and I'd be almost embarrassed to say, oh yeah, I done it 3 times, but I'm, you know, I obviously wish it, not that I wish it didn't happen, but I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm happy to say, yeah, no, look, this is happened to me, but I'm still able to get back to that level that I was before. And look, again, fortunately, I've had really good people around me, and I never felt like I wasn't able to get back to the player I was, and I'm still trying to improve, and I'm still trying to get better. So yeah, look, I think it's something that happened to me, but it's something that I don't dwell on at the minute because I don't have an issue about it. And look, once I was ready to get back playing, that's me ready. And look, I still look after myself. I do my gym. I love doing that kind of stuff, and I'd be still diligent with that. And I think that's really important for people as well. Like, don't forget about that stuff if you have had an injury. Um, so yeah, look, it's something that happened to me, but it's something that I might be a wee bit more aware of my load and that sort of stuff, especially if I'm getting a wee bit older now, and I can definitely feel a bit more aches and pains, and not necessarily even my knees, but maybe the mornings after training down the stairs, I'm kind of like, oh, but then I listen up and I'm brand. So, um, look, yeah, it happened to me. I got through it, and I'm proud of that as well. So. There's also worse things that could happen to people, and I'm aware of that as well. So I'm lucky in that sense that I'm still able to play. So
Good point. Good point. Last year, we were named captain Donegal. Describe kind of the honour that goes with that. Obviously, everyone dreams of playing for their county, but to be named captain is clearly a huge honour. But what was that like, kind of hearing the news, and kind of your reaction to it?
yeah, it was a shock. It was it's not something that you expect. It's not something that I would have ever been thinking about. But obviously, when Maxie asked me, it's a great honour, and to be asked. And I suppose, look, I'm sure a lot of people that get asked this question, especially girls as well. There's captain is the person who goes for the toss. They have a wee bit more interaction with the manager, and you're maybe that link between players and managers. And but look, it's not as if there's one captain on our team. We've plenty, and there's loads of great leaders. And I think for me as well, I really try and especially with the younger girls coming through, it's something that I really like doing, is just chatting to them and just seeing where they're at, and seeing if there's anything you can do to help them, or even just giving them tips, or giving them ideas, or what they're good at, what could they get better at. And girls are largely really, they're there because they want to get better. They're there because they want to improve. So look, we had a good run this year, disappointing, I suppose, as well. But there's not really a group that I would rather be a part of, as sort of cliche as it sounds. And you never feel the captaincy isn't like an individual role. It's, you never feel alone either. So there's always someone to turn to. And as I said, like, there's girls in that team that I still look up to, and will continue to do, because they were the girls that I would have looked up to when I was maybe a wee bit younger as well. So no, but look, it was lovely. And we'll get our heads down again next year, and see where we go.
What's your approach as captain? Do you lead with kind of like a quiet leader, or do you like kind of the big kind of Coach Carter style speeches before a game or training?
No, not really. It's probably a bit of both. I definitely wouldn't be quiet. I wouldn't be, loads of Coach Carter stuff, but I think definitely, just trying to encourage, and just trying to maybe give my piece of advice to the group or whatever. And as I said, it's not usually just one person speaking. It's a group thing, and it's a group ideas, and then everyone gets to say what they want to say, and then we'll say, right, we'll give that a go, or we'll try this, or we'll come up with something collective for sure. And as I said, some people can find being named captain quite daunting, but for me, I know that, like, the support's there, and there's people there, and I'm not by myself. But look, it's an honor. And I said, hopefully we can be a bit more successful next year.
when you have a younger player coming in, or a new player to the setup, they don't have to be that young, but when they're kind of just settling into the squad, what advice would you give a player like that? Or let's say they're kind of struggling to kind of, even when we spoke about previously, kind of the jump from minor to senior is huge, kind of maybe physicality wise. What advice would you give a player coming into an inter-county setup?
Yeah, I think when you have a new player coming into something like that, I would always talk about the team. Sometimes they don't feel as if it's their team yet. Maybe at their clubs it's their team, and because they care so much about it, and that's the way I am with in a lot of most of the girls are with Donegal, is like it's our team, and definitely the girls that are a bit more experienced and have been there. And when you come into that setup, sometimes of course, like anything, there's that wee bit of a, what would I say, like not a disconnect, but maybe there's, in their minds it's, oh, okay, it's us and it's them, whereas you're really trying to get that nipped in the bud as soon as you can, and not nipped in the bud in a bad way, but just kind of getting them involved, and making sure that you're asking for their opinion. And I would always say to the girls, like, don't be afraid to do what you do at your club, or do what you do because that's why you're here, and don't be afraid to tell me off, or tell me something, or tell me to go there. Like, everyone's on the one level, and there's girls that are quiet, and they'll never say that. But I think as well, for those girls, when you're speaking to a group, or you're giving advice, largely sometimes the message can get lost because everyone's listening, but no one really thinks that you're speaking to them. So if there was something in particular, like, I would always try and go on an individual level, whether that was just casual conversation, or whether that was something that I felt that they might help. And I'd always ask, what do you think, or what do you think you get better at? And like, it's been really good this year. We've had our training has been as high a standard as it has been this last 5 or 6 years since I've been involved anyway, because the girls are just wanting to do the best they can. Like, the younger ones are blowing us out of the water and everything, and the runs and stuff. So that's good. And look, you have to bide your time sometimes, but hopefully now next year we'll get a good run at it, and the girls will come to it. And look, once you start playing as well, you start to feel and become more a part of that as well.
Mm-hmm. You keep mentioning next year, but I actually thought this year was a pretty significant year for yourselves. Maybe not as a player, it's kind of hard to see when you might not have a medal, but kind of describe looking back on the season now. Is it a successful year for Donegal? Is it maybe a building block? What phase do you see the team in currently?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one, because look, we got to the semi final. We got to the final, obviously, of the league, and we were disappointed in the Ulster final. We definitely feel like, each year we're getting closer. I suppose we're just trying to figure out, how do we get over the line? What are we missing, or what can we do to get there? And look, I think especially the semi final. Look, Meath were good at what they needed to be good at in those last 5-10 minutes, whatever it was. And we missed our opportunities when we had them, and they took theirs. So that's probably the disappointing from that end. But to be that close and know that we have, there's improvements there to be made, I suppose you can take a bit of solace from that. And look, it's disappointing, but as I said, it's not discouragement. You take that disappointment and you turn it into something else. I suppose in Donegal we're in a wee bit of a, probably in the next few years, a bit of a transition where we do have some older girls and we have younger girls coming in. So we're sort of just seeing where we're at that way. And look, as I said, trying to blood new players and get them in and get them into the standard as well, which again strengthens the whole squad. Getting to the league was a bit of a, it's not something at the start of the year you set out and think, right, our goals are going to be to get to the league final. You go out and you try and win every match and you try and play the best you can. And we did that, and that was a great achievement. So look, again, we came up short, probably for similar reasons as well. Meath were better than us on the day. But look, we'll get there. We'll regroup again and go again, I suppose.
Was it a milestone to beat Dublin, or is it just another step in the phase of the All-Ireland series?
Yeah, like, obviously, look, Dublin have been the standard bearers for the last 7 years, whatever it is, and as I said, they're the teams that you want to play. Like, I look forward to playing the Dublin because you know you're going to get a match, and you know it's both teams are going to go at it and give everything. But like for us, we know within ourselves that when we get it right in the day, like we can beat any team. And of course, it was a shock for other people out there. But you know, I suppose the first game in the league was probably described as a bit of a snatch and grab, you know. But we still came out at the end. We got the 2 goals, you know, very late on. But the game in Carrick and Shannon, sorry, like, you know, there's no real arguments about it. To be honest, we were the better team on the day, and in previous years, Dublin were the better team, and they beat us. So look, we know that when we can do that it's there for us, and we could beat any team on our day. And look, I suppose that's the mentality you have to have, and that's the way all the teams will be thinking, that you know, on their day. And look, if you don't have that belief, then you're fighting a losing battle, you know. So but yeah, look, we'll get forward. We'll move forward again, and as I said, just trying to get over that line, I suppose, for us in the next wee while.
What was the biggest difference, you think, between yourselves and Meath in that semi-final? Can you pinpoint the difference? Obviously, with Vicky and Orla, and I think Emma Troy is travelling, that team might be, and the management team stepping away, so there's a lot of changes with that team. But with this year, what would you see as kind of the glaring difference between the two teams for yourself? Or is there? It might not be a glaring difference. It might just be a small thing.
I think with Meath, they've obviously been playing with their system this last, you know, 5 or 6 years, and that's the Meath All Ireland wins was not an overnight or a year thing. Like, you know, they've been working on that for 5 and 6 years, and you know, it shows you how long it takes for that to come to fruition, you know. And you know, they've reaped the rewards from that. And it's like anything, it's really difficult to really stick to a system and have the concentration to do that. And they've really nailed that down. And I know psychology is a big part of their game, and you know, it's a big part of their backroom team, and you know, just their concentration levels. And for me, I suppose, you know, looking back to that semi-final, they were able to keep that ball in the back line, and then move it out, work it the whole way up the pitch, and get a score. Just the calmness that they were able to have to do that. And you can't help but just admire them for that. Look, as sickening as it was for us, I don't think there's any mad big difference between the teams. Definitely not. I think just for us, it's just about, right, what can we improve on? Because we know that, you know, as I said, if we can play the game that we know we can play as consistent. Sorry, what am I looking for? For as long as the match is possible, you know, then we feel that we have a good chance against anyone. You know, probably with us, and people would talk about it, you know, we're in and out, we're up and down, and you don't know what Donegal is going to turn up. But look, that's something that we're working on, and it's not something that we would pay too much attention to. Like, we know we go to training, we do our bits, and we just go out and we try and stick to the plan as best we can. That's going to change because teams change, and you can't control everything else. But that's what we'll be working on anyway.
How do you find it in the middle of a game? I spoke to Mickey Quinn about this from Longford, and it's kind of like, communication wise, even when let's say when you mentioned they're kind of adjusting to a team and mid-match, how's that communication wise when you go to the likes of a Croke Park, or kind of, you know, in the middle of the championship and tensions are high and adrenaline's running? How do you find that kind of communication between players? You know, you mentioned that sweeper role you have. How do you manage that?
It's very difficult in Croke Park. Even though they're like, it's just so vast and so big, and you can barely hear anything. And I suppose it's just having that trust in your teammates that everyone will be able to recognise what's happening. And it's something that you've worked on, and you'd like to think that, you know, as matches come up, you've kind of covered as many areas as you can, you know, what you think could, or what ifs might happen. And that's something that we talked about this year, was like, you know, what if this, what if that, you know, happened. And it's something that we were able to kind of say, okay, we have a plan if this happens. So when it does, it's not necessarily everybody shouting at everyone, okay, this is what we're doing, but it's that you can kind of recognize what's happening. And I suppose that's practice, and that's repetition of training as well, and kind of just making sure that everyone understands. And that's where questions are so important, that I feel. And I feel, I don't know if it's like a girl thing or if it's an Irish thing, but sometimes people are afraid to ask questions, but it's something that I really, really kind of encourage, because, as I said, you could be speaking to a group and everyone's listening, but no one really thinks you're speaking to them either. So I suppose it's getting them on that level. And I think, look, if you ask a question, you're more likely because you have thought about it. It's something that's obviously been turning over. So yeah, like adapting in the during the match is always difficult. Maybe if it's something that you're really not expecting, you're hoping to get to half time as quick as you can, maybe limit whatever you can, and then just keep trying to do your own thing as well and get a bit of a.
What would you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead there.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to ask, what do you think is the most underrated skill in the game at the moment? Is there anything that you will see that, whether it's the intercounty senior level or you're watching club games or underage players, what are we not focusing on that we should pay more attention to?
Probably the high catch. You don't see a whole lot of it in girls football. And if you do, maybe it's not executed as well as you see it in the men's. Now, also in the ladies or the girls, like there's probably not as a lot of those big, massive lumped balls in as such. But I think definitely being able to high catch and also soloing at speed under pressure is a big thing, and being able to protect the ball. You have some people who are really good at it, like Vicky's obviously really good at it. Yvonne from here and Geraldine as well are also very good at it. I think that's a big thing coming from maybe an underage into senior setup, is obviously the speed of the game, and the speed of players, and being able to solo and carry the ball at top speed under pressure and retain possession is a massive thing. And it's, again, I think it's something that's maybe not been missed, but maybe something that could be worked on a lot more at underage levels as well. I don't mean like a jog, I mean like top as fast as you can, get up the pitch with the ball.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I like the way the high catch. Are you advocating for kind of a midfield mark, is it?
See, I wouldn't be the tallest either, but I do like a high catch. But no, I just think it's something that especially in girls and underage, that it should be just practiced a wee bit more, I think. And because I think the difference that it can make in terms of the speed of the game and the speed for your team, if you won't catch them all obviously, but I think if you can catch one and go on a quick turn or whatever it might be, rather than the ball breaking, and then it's kind of like a wee bit of a fight in the ground for it.
Totally. We spoke about the physicality and we've mentioned real changes, but this could be an episode on itself. But for you, kind of quickly quickly kind of put together real changes for you physicality wise. Even the sim bin I've heard, which is, I actually think makes a lot of sense, because 10 minutes out of a 60-minute game has a much bigger effect obviously than a 70-minute game. Physicality wise, or any other rules, what do the organisation need to look at for players from your perspective? What would you like to see done?
Like, I don't necessarily, for me, it's probably more the consistency of the refereeing for me personally across a standard. Like, referees will ref it different ways. Some referees will allow all contact to go, but it kind of, at least both teams are getting the same treatment. You know exactly what you can and can't do. Some referees don't let anything go, and some are kind of like, yeah, that can go, but this can't, or this is full. So for me, it's just a consistency. Definitely, like it's described as a non-contact sport, but like it's not a non-contact sport. Like that's just silly, in my opinion. Obviously, you don't want it to turn into like sort of like the AFL and those kind of cynical kind of tackles. And I don't necessarily know if it needs to be as physical as the men's game with the kind of the slapping, etc. But I definitely think that the non-contact thing needs to come out. And I think I know referee can be a thankless job, and they're volunteers as well. But I think even just the consistency of it, because it would, for me, it wouldn't happen in the men's game. If the referee wasn't being consistent, it would be said, or it would happen, or they wouldn't get a big game. And there's been times in the past where we've had refs for finals and big games, and you look and they've had junior games and or whatever it might be, and they're not, the junior maybe standard and the speed and the physicality isn't there, so they're used to that, and then it just gets really frustrating. So I think there's an onus on kind of the associations to make sure that we're getting the right, it's fair for us as well. And you wouldn't send a junior A ref into the All Ireland final, so don't do it in the ladies' game, that sort of way. And I don't like whinging or complaining about it, because look, it's a thankless job, they're volunteers. But I think just in terms of the players as well, if it was consistent, there wouldn't be as much backlash as well from players.
I wanted to ask you about as a player, what's it like seeing the change in support for the game? Like, obviously Little coming on board is huge, but for you as a player, when there's more girls, especially, and younger boys, I've seen younger boys go to games, coming in and supporting your team, what is that like as a player? What does that do not only for your confidence but for the team morale?
Yeah, I think it's really, it's obviously brilliant now that Little has come on board, and obviously their sponsorship and their marketing has been brilliant. And they're massive supporters, obviously, of the LGFA and the games. I think the more that happens, the more people see, the more people know. And it's kind of funny now, because even in Donegal, I've asked to be could I do a few things, or could I speak somewhere, or could I do a few presentations? And it's stuff that you kind of are a wee bit like, sort of like, oh God, I'm a wee bit embarrassed about that. But it's stuff that obviously, like, in the men's game has been happening all the time, and it becomes second nature, and you sort of feel like a bit of a, I don't want to say a fraud, but you're like, oh really, you want me to do
Bit of
that? And
imposter syndrome sort of
yeah,
thing.
you're kind of like, what? And then look, you see that the young girls, they're just so excited. And like, I went to a presentation in my own club there at the start of the year, and it was boys and girls, and I was doing the presentation, and it was like, I just wasn't expecting it. And obviously, even my own club, and I walked in, and there's this hall full of maybe like 100 or 150 kids, and they're just all screaming, and like, all I could do was just laugh, because I was just like, oh my God, there's so many people. And it's just great, because obviously the games are on TV and people see you on TV, and I think that's a massive thing. And especially for a younger generation, they're seeing people on TV, and then they're seeing them at their clubs, or they're seeing them, walking down the street, or they meet them after the games. And it's just, it's really good that way to keep people involved. And that's happening all over the place. Obviously the TV coverage makes it a bit more accessible for people to watch as well. Obviously we'd like more people to come to games. And I think the league is a wee bit more difficult, because obviously it's the dead of winter, and it's not great weather and stuff. You'll always have your families there, but definitely our attendances have improved massively, and people are willing to travel. And even people maybe that I've seen pictures of the crowd in Croke Park in the league final, that people that I know but would never have thought would have been at matches. And it's just really, you're like, usually you're at the match. Jeez, that's brilliant. And it's just really nice that way. And as I said, just I think it's well deserving, because girls play and train, and as I said, the game has developed so much, and there's so much skill and talent on show, that I think is important for people to see. And said, it keeps people involved, and it gives people something to look up to, and something to kind of aspirate towards, or to say that you can't see, can't be, sort of that whole thing that went on. And I think that's been a big push over the last few years. So yeah, it's really good.
We're going to move on to Sideline 7, brought to you by RTP Physiotherapy, founded by chartered physiotherapists Tony Fox and Thomas Divilly. The guys are based in St.Judes GA Club in Templeogue in Dublin. RTP specialise in physiotherapy, return to play, physical health, performance. You can visit rtp.physio for more. Question 1, what is your favourite quote, Niamh?
Oh, what's my favourite quote? Probably that one I spoke about earlier. Even when things aren't going your way, find a way to win, or find a way to keep going.
Brilliant.
It's along those lines anyway.
Very good. Question 2, what's the best sporting event you've been to? And you can pick one as a fan and one as a player.
Ooh, one as a fan. Probably one of the best ones was probably being there when Dublin played Galway, and I think they had the highest attendance. It was the, I think it was that
29
one.
or
Was it
18,
that one at the
2018, I
time?
think.
Yeah. And just being there in Croke Park, we were up in the heavens and looking down. It was an awful day, but I think just seeing the amount of people that was, I think the previous record had been like 20 something. So to go from there to there in the space of a year was pretty good. And as a player, um, going to the World Cup with the under 17s. Um, yeah, many years ago. Trinidad,
I was going to ask you about, sorry, what, go ahead.
in Trinidad and Tobago, I was going to say that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd say so. I was going to ask you about that earlier with because I spoke to Kira Grant obviously, and when she spoke about that team, like when you look at the players that were on that squad, and even let's say not playing soccer, playing ladies football now, was that just a really kind of a once in a generation age group? Was it some sort of environment that was created that allowed people to excel on and off the pitch? What was it for you? Was it just this kind of amalgamation of a lot of things together, or was it created? Or give us a bit of an insight into the group dynamic and environment.
Yeah, like I don't really think it was I don't really think it was as created as such. I think it just so happened that at that time, like Noel King was the manager, and me and Kira played like maybe 2 years below as well for 17s, or we were 2 years younger, so we'd been on the team for like 2 years previous, and even at that time, he was saying to us, the 93s, it's going to be a good year and this year, or whatever. So he had obviously been out and about and scouting and looking and knowing that there was players here and players there, and um him at that time, I just remember he just used to, like, we got so much confidence from him because, we knew that the players were great around us, like Denise O'Sullivan, like she's still the best player I've ever seen. But, you know, I just remember thinking, oh my God, we're great. Like we could do anything because that's what he told us that we could do. And it wasn't like a cocky thing. It was just like we were just so well prepared. And as I said, everything was just like that. And we were so well drilled and trained. And we'd spent maybe like the guts of 2 years together that we were all friends as well. So that obviously helped. So it was just mad. Like it was a mad time thinking back to it. Like, and it was the time of our lives.
Question 3, we've kind of mentioned it a few times, but what was the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
Yeah, it's probably, the injuries as such. But look, you get a setback, and as I said, you just try and. For me, it was never, oh, I'm not getting back. It was like, right, I'm gonna get back, and I suppose just surrounding yourself with good people, not being too hard on yourself, and just doing the best you can, I suppose, to get back there.
Kind of on the flip side, then, what's been your biggest achievement on or off the pitch?
Achievement. I think I would probably say, look, being captain as well is a very nice thing for me. It's not an award, or it's not a it's not a medal, but I think just being a part of a really good bunch of players, and being able to lead them as a front, but just as I said, knowing that it is it's just an aim. It's not a you know being part of that team has been really nice as well. So yeah, probably that.
Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self just coming back from your or in the throes of your second recovery or ACL recovery?
Oh, I don't know. Geez, I don't know. Probably, yeah, just take every opportunity that you can that comes with you. I probably would be one to kind of weigh things up, whereas sometimes I probably just need to just go for it. So maybe that just doing things. No, I definitely have had a great time and stuff. There's not many regrets or anything like that, so it's grand.
Okay, very good. Who would be your dream dinner guest and why? And you can open up the table to a few people if you want.
Dream dinner guest. Oh God. Who would be my dream dinner guest? Someone funny anyway. Um,
Tommy Tiernan, or is that different levels of comedian?
Tommy Tiernan, I've seen him. Um, I'd probably, bring back, maybe go get that team from the under 17s and bring them all around, and just chat about what we were doing and what they're doing now these days, and yeah, no, maybe all those girls from that team from 2010 now.
Okay, very good. Final question before I let you go. You've been so generous with your time. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
Uh, what would this be called now? Um, getting on, getting on. getting on now.
Getting on. Very good. Niamh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'll be sure to leave all your social media links in the description box below, and best of luck with next year and beyond.
Thank you very much, Orla. Thanks for having me.
A big thank you to Niamh for joining me on the podcast today. I thoroughly enjoyed our chat, and I just want to congratulate her on her LGFA Players Player of the Year award. If you are enjoying the podcast, please do leave a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it does help the show grow. Also, let me know who you would like to hear from in 2023, and be sure to follow all of our social media at The Sideline Live for more.